Joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Walter Jones, Republican, 3rd District, North Carolina. He says he's going to retire, but we're going to talk him out of it. That's right. We're going to talk him out of it. He doesn't want to retire. He has too much fun up here. He has too much fun. Congressman Jones. I can't even say that with a straight face. Congressman Jones, great to have you with us, sir.
Well, John, thank you. And you and I both know you told the young intern to beware of when he leaves the office of the swamp. And the swamp has alligators and snakes in it. And therefore, I am always fighting this alligators and snakes. And they're growing by the day.
They really are growing by the day. And that's why you've got to lock the door, right? You cannot leave the door open.
I understand.
Lock the door. Okay, so I want to talk about this article that came out in Bloomberg, sir, if I may. The Treasury Department predicted the U.S. government's borrowing needs in the second half of this year will jump to the most since the financial crisis a decade ago.
Yep.
And the department expects to issue, get this, all right, get this, $330 billion in net marketable debt from July through September. This is the 4th largest total for that quarter on record and higher than the $273 billion estimated in April. And there seems to be no end in sight. What's the deal here?
Well, John, I have said on your show many times, in my humble opinion, very few in Washington, both parties included, care about the growing debt and the growing deficit. The article you just made reference to, which subtitled, "The Boost Comes as Tax Cuts, Spending Hike Inflate the Deficit." The deficit next year is projected to be $1 trillion. And there are a few people like you that would bring it up. I think that the president, whether it be a Democrat or Republican, has never let the growing debt and deficit be a factor in their leadership, and I think that is wrong, either party.
So the deficit, just so that everyone knows, the current year deficit, not the national debt, which is over $20 trillion, the deficit in this fiscal totaled $607 billion through the first 9 months of the fiscal year that ends September 30th. All right, so we got $607 billion in debt for the first 9 months. This was compared with $523 billion from the same period a year earlier. Now, the Congressional Budget Office in late June predicted the total government spending would exceed revenue this fiscal year by over $800 billion and by $1 trillion in 2020. $1 trillion. So that just keeps adding to the debt, right? So if the debt is 19, you add a trillion, that's 20, you add another trillion, it's 21. At what point does Congress say, okay, this is a catastrophe for us, it's the edge of economic Armageddon, we have to do something about it? How high does it have to be, sir?
John, I don't think the right people in America are concerned as they should be about it. I asked my staff, after the president talked about $18 billion to bail out our farmers, where's the money coming from? We continue to bail out and spend more money in Afghanistan. You got my report from the Inspector General that says that 27% of all the money being spent for reconstruction in Afghanistan, 27% goes to waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, where's the outrage on that by Congress?
Nothing.
We keep spending money like we know we're not broke. Well, Congress, we're broke.
So I've asked this to Tim Kaine, Mark Warner. I've asked it to Democrats and Republicans, both sides of the aisle. What number do you hit the panic button? Is it obviously, I mean, remember when we were talking about approaching 15 trillion and, you know, that was the magic number,
Right.
and now it's 20 trillion. What number is it, 25? Or is there even a number where somebody is going to say, you know, we just can't do this anymore?
Well, I asked Ron Paul, because he's been a dear friend of mine for years, and he's been a deficit hawk. I said, Ron, let's talk about the debt. What do you think would be the wake-up call for America? He said, Walter, I don't really know. He said, I think that when we get close to $30 trillion, it's going to collapse.
So the collapse number is 30 trillion now.
Well, we're at 23 trillion now.
We're at 23 now.
Yeah, and I think that was Ron Paul's opinion. He said, I don't know for sure what the top line is before the collapse comes. He said, but when you start getting close to $30 trillion in debt, he said, I think a lot of the international markets are going to get shaky.
So let me just ask you this. Part of the president's economic plan is to expand the economy or get all these people that weren't working, get new companies, small businesses opening up, paying taxes, to increase the total number, the total amount of revenue coming in. Kind of the old Laffer curve, Arthur Laffer curve philosophy. Cut rates, grow the pie. At a certain point, you get more revenue. But can we get enough revenue, Congressman Walter Jones, to grow our way out of this? Or at some point, are we just going to have to start to cut spending?
John, I think it's going to be primarily cutting spending. That's something we've never done since I've been in Congress, was to cut spending significantly. Here we are spending, $700, $800 billion passed the bill last week for the military. Well, let's start cutting the waste and fraud and abuse out of the DOD budget. I've talked to General Mattis about it. I think he is sincerely trying to do it. But every year we give them more money and you get more waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm for a strong military. But somebody's got to start speaking about the waste and DOD.
But what your colleagues are telling us is that, when I talk to them, is that so high of a percentage of the money that we spend is just institutional spending, like it's entitlements, that you would have to reform the entire Medicaid system, Medicare, Social Security, welfare, all that. Like, this big percentage of the money we spend is untouchable, and so discretionary spending is really only a small percentage of that. How do you react to that?
You know what, let's start with the easiest thing we can do. Then get to the more difficult things like Medicare and Social Security. But we can't even do the small thing. How are we going to ever do the big thing? Mm-hmm. My whole point has always been set in motion. The president says to Congress, do not increase the budget. If we're at war and we need more money, then let's raise taxes. I am sick and tired of always raising the budget and not paying for it. If you want to fight wars around the world, raise the taxes. Pay for it with taxes. Don't do to your grandchildren what we're doing to them, because it is a sin.
Well, I tell you what, Congressman Walter Jones, I agree with that assessment 100%. I mean, one of the problems we had, and why I was never a fan of George Bush 1 or George Bush 2, especially the son, is this idea that you could start wars and fight them and everything is going to be fine. There's no change. And I think people become callous to this. And so, I was opposed to both Iraq wars, for first one with his father, second one with him. Neither made any sense to me. But either way, if you're going to go to war, there should be a speech, and it's like, here's what we're going to do. And by the way, I need a tax increase of 3% to pay for it. And also, by the way, I'm instituting the draft because everybody's going to have to feel the pain. And so I don't care what your economic status is. I don't care if you're working a trade, home with mom and dad, or at Princeton. If your draft number comes up, you're going. Doesn't matter who your father is, how much money you have, and who's on Wall Street. You're going. That's what a war is, right? Instead, we have these wars where everybody volunteers, there's no tax increases, nobody pays for it, and body bags come home. And so once in a while it's on the news, and that's it. And so there's no pain here.
Well,
Am
John,
I right?
Your point is well articulated. That's the whole thing. If you hold down the budget and say we're not going to increase the budget at all this year, that means veteran benefits, that means Social Security. I mean, You hold it at the level you did for last year. That's not going to fix the problem, but it is a small start on trying to fix the problem. Nobody wants to do that. That's why we're not making any progress at all.
And nobody will even talk about it. But I have to say, you and Ron Paul are the first one to give me a number. And at least the number is $30 trillion is the panic number, Congressman. I'm out of time for this segment. I want to thank you for being with us, Congressman Walter Jones.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, sir, so much.